So, as the founder of the new wrestling shoe company, Bmoney Beastin Athletics, I have to ask you, what made you want to start your own wrestling shoe company?
Originally it wasn't a wrestling shoe company. Money Beastin was a term that my son came up with when he was 5 years old on an Xbox.
Hmm.
That's as true as you can get. And he did the dollar sign, the apostrophe, like the whole thing was a 5 year old's creation. And for some reason, I thought it was cool, and I wrote it down. I never knew if I'd ever do anything with it, but I had it in my wallet for like years. And I'm like, there's something there. I don't know what it is, but there's something there. So originally, I was going to try to be like you remember like Everlast back in the day? Do you remember the Everlast brand?
Right. Yeah, they were kind
Yeah,
of across different sports.
yeah. Well, Everlast was like a middle of the road, affordable type brand. My uncle used to buy it for me when I was a kid from Kmart, and I
Right.
was like, well, maybe I could do something like that with Bmoney Beastin. So I started my LLC, and I started my partner Quantal. Me and him kind of collaborated on branding and things like that, and I started realizing real quick that this is not what I want to do. Right, this is not the avenue I wanted this to go down. And I spent like months. I'm like, there's this niche product. I got to figure out what it is. Well, around Christmas last year, my son goes, Dad, I want these Rudis. I forget which one they were, but they were like 180 bucks, right?
Right.
And I was like, and for some reason, when he said that, I started Googling, and it just like dawned on me. Boom, there's not really an affordable option, right? Like for say, and then it started clicking in my head. It's like I'm a big fan of Shaquille O'Neal, right?
Mhm.
And he talked in the mid 90s, and he tells us a story today about how he had a Reebok deal, and he decided to go against it, and he shut it down, and he started selling shoes through Walmart that are like 30, 40 bucks. They're
Right.
affordable for everybody. So there's that for like the basketball space. You can buy cleats, you can buy it. There's nothing like that in the wrestling space, right? So I was like, that's what I got to do. And the version ones, we pulled the trigger on them, and we started with 167 pair. We're down to 55.
Wow.
We're in 18 states with the version ones. We have the version twos coming out probably July 1st, right around July 1st. They'll be starting to ship the ones that have sold already. And I was going to show you this while we're on here. This could be the version three.
Wow.
Uh, this is a sample pair. It's got a really nice sole. If you see that, that's not a sticker. That's like molded into the shoe.
Hmm.
So that could be the version three. Um, my whole goal here is to provide an affordable alternative, and it's cool if anybody wants to wear them. I'm really gearing towards like beginners or 8 week wrestlers. That space. There's nothing in that space.
Right. Well, and you mentioned where you want the company to go, and that goes into my next question. That all around, really, what is your company's mission?
Well, from the time we founded to the time to the to date, we I think it was in March we passed $2,700 in donations across the country, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but I mean for a very small business, that's a lot of stuff we've given to underprivileged people.
Absolutely.
I think my long term goal is to I'm smart enough to realize that if I pay this for this, I can sell it for this, make a smaller profit, and sell more of them.
Hmm.
Our profit margins are very razor thin, and they're designed like that on purpose because like I know inflation's going to push things up, and eventually right now we got a 49.99 price point. Eventually it'll be like 54.99, whatever it is to make up the difference of inflation. But that's my goal long term, is to keep things in the most affordable range possible.
Right.
And I want to keep a gap between like us and everybody else, right? Like Adidas and Rudis and I want to keep that big buffer where we're the affordable alternative. And the cool thing is Bryson wore a pair of the version ones for 7 months,
Hmm.
and they split after 7 months. Now this is a kid that wrestles 5 6 days a week. He's at a tournament, so you're talking about an 8 week beginner wrestler for and I got those now. Those are $34.99 on my website for 8 weeks, 34.99. You can't beat that anyway, right? So like they last, they're durable, it fits the niche. So I think my long-term goal is just to keep that buffer, right, between us and everybody else to where we're an affordable alternative.
Right. And you mentioned how the prices for Rudis and Adidas and all the other companies that sell wrestling shoes, they're up there to say the least. I know personally. And you mentioned the durability of the shoes. I remember I had a pair of white um, Nike wrestling shoes, right? Got them in like January last year. About by October, the front of the sole had completely come off the front shoe. So then I had to scramble to get a new pair around the time right when the season was starting. So, if you have a durable shoe that's at an affordable price, I think it could really grow the popularity of that product.
And that's the goal here, right? Like the version ones actually withstood very well. The version twos are even better. So like I think we've improved, and I think that's a goal too. Is each round that we do, I want to improve and get better and get better. And but with that being said, even I'm not bashing Rudis or anybody. Every company that produces a product has a flaw with their product at some point, right? That's just the way it's going to be. Um, I haven't had any problems yet. I know it's coming at some point, and that's the way it is. And I'll always like honor that. If there's a bad pair, I'll send them another pair. I'll always be fair with people. Um, with that being said, though, I think wrestling's a tough sport, right? And when you wear wrestling shoes and you're active as much as wrestlers are, there is a shelf life on a pair of wrestling shoes, right? There is. My goal, and I've well beyond succeeded my goal, was when I started putting this together was they have to last 8 weeks. That's my goal, right? Because like if you're looking at like beginners or middle school kids that just wrestle like middle school season, like that's the market that I want, right? That's who I want to cater to. Now, if Jordan Burroughs, God forbid, I know he's got his own Brutus thing. If he wanted a pair, he can wear them. Cool.
Oh yeah.
But that's not who I'm going after, right? Like so, and I've far surpassed that because we had a couple of, trial runs. Bryson was my guinea pig, and they're still in his bag. He can still wear them. It just split a little bit on the side, but it was 7.5, 8 months into it. So you're talking about something that at my cost was so dirt cheap that you can still keep the pricing for retail down to people. It's kind of a no-brainer. So trying to get people to buy into the branding and be like, hey, my kid wrestles. He starts in October. He's done by Christmas. Why would I spend, $180 on a pair of shoes when I could spend, $49? And on top of that, if you got a kid that's, like a younger kid, like the AAU season lasts what, 8, 10 weeks, something like that, realistically. So like if you take the AAU season, you're already spending, if you add it up, say they did just the Tennessee, you live in Tennessee, say the Tennessee like AAU. It starts what, like November, and it's over like in February.
Right.
So you got that time period. If you add up just the sign up fees, right, alone, that's expensive, right? Like for the top 100s and the local Boy Buchanan tournament or whatever it is. If say they did it all, most kids don't, but to say they did, that's a big cost in itself. So why would you want to add to that when I can provide you something that's a quality, affordable alternative? And that's what I'm trying to fill is that niche.
That's a really good point about the expenses that go into the season. If you look at the growth and the trend of wrestling year round, and that's been a trend that's been really growing for the past 20, 25 years. But nowadays, I think more than ever, athletes are picking up on, especially wrestlers, on competing year round. And you obviously need to be prepared to do that. So if you have a shoe that's durable, and you mentioned the travel fees, competing year round, it's expensive.
Yeah.
Across the country, you're booking hotels, you're signing up for tournaments, you're paying for singlets, team gear, all sorts of stuff. It more than adds up. And so I think you bring up a good point with wanting to take away, and help out just a little bit by bringing that price of a high necessity like a wrestling shoe down in a market where the price is usually so high.
Yeah, that's the goal. I can't fix the whole dynamic of this thing, but I can do my part to make a difference. And I think that's where I kind of narrowed in, because if you look at all these companies, when I was doing research for like price points on wrestling shoes, the most affordable pair I found, and I think all of us had had a pair of these at one time, those Adidas with the little strap on the side,
Mm-hmm.
the little flat sole Adidas. They were like $58 and something, right, on Amazon, right? Some vendor had them and was reselling them. And I was like, that's the best you got in that price point. I can beat that. And, like, I'm sure you've seen these, but like version ones,
Right.
they have a better look, they're durable, and they're cheaper. They're more, not cheaper, that's a bad word. They're more affordable. So I was like, you know what, I can beat that. And then that's what I kind of worked off of. And as companies are trying to make more and more profits, I'm doing everything I can to make it less and less, to where I'm still able to sustain, but I'm not putting all my cost off on the consumer. And I feel like that's like the heart and soul of America in terms of like mom and pops. Like, I think a lot of mom and pops or small business, like, they want to help people.
Right.
That's like the goal. So like, a shout out to small business. But with that, but back to what you said about like travel fees and things, like, I think about it and I think about kids. Like, I grew up in a kind of a poor area. I grew up in Rossville, but I
Mm-hmm.
was kind of poor. We moved to Ringo when I was in eighth grade. I got to do what the school allowed me to do. And I rode a bike to football practice in the rain and everything else, because I just didn't have opportunities. And that's what this is for, is kids like I was,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's attainable. And I promise you this: if a kid couldn't afford a pair of shoes, I'd give them to them, right? I'd never turn anybody away, right? And I think about parents, and you're paying your rent and your mortgage and your power bill and your water bill and food, and you're budgeting every month. And I can see like a kid brings a flyer home, hey, I want to wrestle, and the sign up fee is $100 or $200, and then you got to buy shoes that are almost $200, and you're like, that could be a deterrent, right?
Absolutely.
But then you got a lot of clubs, like especially down here in North Georgia, like Saddle Ridge is in Lafayette, and then you got Lafayette's got a big club down there now, and Ringo's got a little club, and Ridgeland's got a little club, and most of them are really affordable, like $50, right? And but then you got that big expense of buying shoes, right? So that's what I'm trying to fix. Okay, this kid's gonna wrestle for 8-10 weeks. I can pay $50 and buy him a pair of shoes. And what happens, and this is what I'm hoping is going to happen, when they are done with their season, they put them on Facebook Marketplace, right? I'm not getting anything out of that. I don't want to, but they could be used for somebody else. So that's what I'm trying to keep building, is where they just keep getting passed around, and then eventually they buy another pair. But it's allowing these kids to enter into something that I think is an amazing sport.
But I think that's another great point. It's you're looking to spread the opportunity for kids to wrestle, and I've said it before with a lot of other guests that I've had on here, and I'll definitely say it again in real in person interactions and in more interviews to come. If there's one sport I think an athlete or a kid should try, it's wrestling.
Yeah.
It is a hard sport to love because it is a very demanding sport, but when you learn to love it, you never unlove it, you know. But the benefits that go along with participating in that sport, whether it be accolades or mentality benefits or whatever it may be, they're just invaluable in that sense.
Well, I've met so many people. Like, I'll admit, I wasn't a good wrestler, right? Like, I wasn't. I dabbled in it, middle school, a little bit in high school, but I was a football player.
Mhm.
I know how hard it is because I have been in those rooms. With that being said, like, since Bryson started wrestling when he was 6, so I've been around this in some kind of form or fashion ever since. And he's 13; he'll be 14 at the end of September. The amount of people I've met in this, like Matt Pitts, amazing dude, like, and then like Boskin, Boskin, you probably met
Mhm.
Josh Boskin, and then we're up there with the Russells now. They're good dudes. Like, it seemed, Steve Hamilton, I want to call him out too. He's an amazing human being. I don't know, I'm forgetting somebody, but
There's
all
a
these people that you meet, that did this for like a lifestyle, they got like a different way about them. And I feel like, and they're all they're all different people, of course. Like Boskin, you can text him, and then like 6 months later, he'll text you back and be like, "Oh yeah," it's like, dude, I sent that like 6 months ago. But like everybody's different people, but they have like the same like work ethic. It seems like, and stay on top of things, and like just how they are. I feel like you get that from the sport of wrestling, right? Because, dude, you are right. It's hard. It's real hard. Like, and it's even harder, I feel like, as a parent
Mhm.
trying to balance like looking at it because you're helpless, right? Like you can't help what's about to happen, good or bad, right? Like so you
Right.
feel helpless in it, but at the same time, I feel like it forces like a kid. Like now you're a high school kid, so like in high school age, you're 100% accountable for yourself. But
Right.
when you're talking about like 6, 7, 8, 10-year-old kids, it kind of forces them to kind of take ownership of something. Does that make sense? And by taking that ownership, I feel like they'll develop and mature a lot quicker and better than most kids that don't do this. Because if you think about it in football, I was a football player. I don't know how many times I was like, well, you missed a tackle or, whatever. You dropped a pass or you can always blame. But in wrestling, you can't blame anybody. If you get
No.
beat, you get beat. Like it's your fault. Like, so if you want to win, and that's another thing. The thing about wrestling is brutal too, is like you're cutting weight, you're doing extra on top of going to practice so you can stay on weight. You're watching what you eat. You go out with your buddies and they're eating cheeseburgers and stuff, and you're like
Mhm.
snacking on an orange. You're doing all these things. You're running early in the morning, sitting in the sauna, all these things, and you're not guaranteed anything,
No.
right? Like at all. So it's like a really taxing lifestyle, right? To have in general. But I feel like people that do it turn out to be like really hard work. Like I would trust a wrestler to, if I had to hire someone, right? I'd be like, this guy will do the job, right? Like he could withstand that. I can't never put the pressure on that guy that he put on himself, right? Does that make sense?
Oh
So,
no. Yeah, and you mentioned the work connection to it with hiring people, and I've heard a lot of different examples from different wrestlers who got many opportunities in the workforce because they had that background, and it's because the sport, it just, with the adversity you face at such a young age, like it builds such a one of a kind of work ethic where if you're in like a job and you're staying after hours getting work done and you're tired, you want to go home, you want to go to sleep, something just clicks in your mind. You think back to say if you're an adult 20 years after you wrestled, you think back to the sprints you did after practice and the times where you had to find yourself and work a little bit harder than everyone else to get something done for yourself or for other people. That's just where that always going the extra mile mentality, I think, clicks in.
well, it does. And then, and here's another thing, kids that wrestle, I've kind of learned this, and mainly as a dad, kind of observing, but like, for a long time, and when Bryson started middle school, like he'll be in eighth grade in the fall. When he
Mhm.
started middle school, all these kids thought he was weird, right? Because he's not around, right? He's not doing what all these other kids are doing. And then he'd be like running through the neighborhoods, right? And they'd see him like running in sweats, and it'd be 100 degrees outside, and they're like, what is this kid doing? So
Right.
they all thought he was odd. But then whenever wrestling season came around, and now they only seen like, that little bit of a middle school season, right? They're like, oh, that's what this kid does, right? I think you do all these things. And the reason I said that was when you do all these things alone, you're like alone, right? Like everything outside of like the practice room, you're by yourself for the most part, right?
Much.
Running, sitting in the sauna. You kind of learn to be dependent on yourself. And I think that's a great quality to have to enter the workforce, right? But you learn that very early on in the sport of wrestling, I believe.
No, and it comes in many different examples. It could be whether it's close to midnight and you're on a treadmill in a hotel, 200 miles away from your home, and you got to get the last couple of pounds off or something like that for you weigh in first thing in the morning. Or it could be out there in the middle of a match and your mind's going 1,000 miles per hour, and you just think it yourself, right? I think that helps build the independence that wrestlers at a young age build.
And that's the whole point of trying to build Bmoney Beastin, to allow opportunities. And eventually, like down the road, I want to do like a little scholarship every year.
Mm-hmm.
Once I get really well established, I have this goal to it wouldn't, I don't know what the price point would be on that or what it would offer, but I know I want to do some kind of like Bmoney Beastin scholarship. And like if you wrestled for a season and you give back to the community in some kind of way, something like that, where we kind of give back to them. That's something I see kind of down the road. But I think this little small company that we're working hard every day to try to build, I think we can really make a difference. And if we made a difference in one kid's life that got a pair of shoes and tried the sport of wrestling, and who knows, maybe he becomes an absolute killer and he ends up in college and he gets his degree, that would make this whole thing worth it, even if it's just one guy. But my goal's a million.
No, I mean that's a very very generous goal for a company. You look at a lot of companies that I think focus on the business side of things rather than the kind of, see one way to put this, the impact that it has on the community. You look at all the chain companies out there in the world. You see about more than 100 McDonald's about everywhere, definitely.
Yeah.
But it's those small companies that will give back and really care for the common man per se.
Yeah, we're very blue collar over
here. And the scholarship idea, that I really hope that does happen, because if you look at wrestling for colleges, the scholarship money is a little sparse, to say the least.
Yeah, and that's something that I want to do. Once we get really well established, I think that's something that, like, hey, I don't know if it's $1,000 a year, 500 or 15. I don't know what it is, but like my goal would be like every year we take in like applications for, we'll take up to like 100 applications, and we'll pick somebody and they'll get that every year they're in school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we'll send them a check for that every year, and it would be something in the realm of you don't have to. I don't care if you're owing 150,000. I don't care if you're successful, but if you entered the sport, you worked hard at it, you give back to your community, and you make good grades, you're more than likely going to be successful in your life. Let me try to help do that. So that's the future. We're probably a couple years away from that, but that's what I'm working towards. And my also goal is version 2 is coming out, like I said, in July. Every year I want to come out with a new version. So like 2024 will be the version 3. I don't know if this is it. I'm not sure, but we have 500 pair of version 2s that'll be here within the next week. We have some pre-orders already. We'll ship those out immediately, and they'll be up and ready. And we're in the local market, so if there's any clubs out there that hear this and they want to, I can also come set up, sell on site with, registrations, anything you want like that, just reach out to me.
Well, no, absolutely. I think also with staying at a consistent rate, getting a new shoe, a new design every year would help keep that popularity at an incline. With coming out with a new product each year.
And I've even talked about it. I don't know if this would be feasible or not. Maybe club themed shoes, right? Mm-hmm. Like something, I talked to Sean Russell about maybe possibly in the future, like a minion shoe. Awesome. I don't know, like a Buccaneer, say, Sutherland. If you see this, maybe do like a Buccaneer shoe. We could do something like that. That could be something we do in the future too. But I'm really, for the time being, like I think we're at version 2, which I'm so happy and excited about. And that gives me creativity to work on version 3 that would release sometime in the spring, summer of 24. And then I got 6-8 months to work on, 4 and so on. And my goal is to hit version 99, and then we can start, if we can get that far, I think we'll make a big impact on the wrestling community.
I agree. And you mentioned the club themed shoes, and I think that goes into the importance of the branding. You know, you look at Rudis, we were talking about them earlier. Um, the branding that goes into their shoes, I think, is really one of a kind because it applies to athletes, to figures of the sport, whether it be Dave Schultz, Kyle Date, Kyle Snyder, um, and also with a awesome design that proves that a lot of people, if they like flashy stuff, usually buy into it. Uh,
Right.
and I think that's one of the secrets that goes into apparel and especially sports apparel in today's society.
You know, I don't ever want to get in a position to where I'm trying to pay like NIL deals to
Mm-hmm.
somebody to promote a product because then you have to put that cost back off on the consumer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's against the whole reason I decided to do this, right? So I'm never gonna ever, if I was a millionaire, which I'm not by any means, but if I was a millionaire and I could sign like a, immediately right now, the guy, Chance, what's his, how do you say his last name? The guy that
Marsteller.
Marstello, yeah, they just beat Burrows. If I had to, if I was able to, and I could, if right now he's hot, right, that would be the guy you go after. What is it going to cost to get you to wear a pair of my shoes, right? But at the same token, all that money you have to put back off on the consumer, right? Say it's 100,000, 50,000, whatever the number is. Now you got to spread that over on the cost of every pair of shoe to pay it off.
Right.
So that's counterproductive to what I'm trying to do. Now, Rudis is completely all for profit. That's all they're trying to do is just make as much money as possible. I'm trying to make a difference.
No, I can understand that by all means, and that actually answered my own question that I had about the price differential with Rudis. And obviously, you mentioned it coming back to the consumer and having to make up for the money they spent to produce that product. So that
And pay the athlete that's promoting it.
right,
Like all that cost you have to put back on the consumer to pay for it. Like it just don't appear. Money don't just appear. And that's what I'm trying. That's what I'm not going to do ever. I'm just going to self promote. Like we may do another ad. We did an ad on Channel 12 last year during Friday Night Football. We may do that again in the fall in like the local market because I read a study one time that the small business you start in your nucleus where you're from and it expands out. Which the funny thing is, I hit 18 states right off in the last like year or whatever with the version ones. And the last state I sold to was Georgia.
is that
and,
right?
I'm like, I've got shoes in Colorado, West Virginia, Florida, and I'm just now like I have a calendar and I'll check when I finally get a pair to that state. And I was like, how am I not selling any in Georgia? I live in Georgia, like, and it's just odd, but like I'm just gonna that's how I'm gonna go with it. I don't want to ever put any extra cost on the consumer. I want to help the consumer. And in
Right.
return, I want them to help support us and help what we're trying to do.
Well, in the southeast, especially wrestling has grown at a tremendous rate. And I remember I had Mike Sutherland and Mike Hatcher on for my last episode, and we solely talked about the growth of wrestling in the South and Tennessee. And it is growing, like I said, at a phenomenal rate across the board. And same with Georgia, and same with Florida and the other states throughout the South. So I definitely think that market will continue to expand for the demand for shoes, merchandise, team gear, and with the growth of clubs, I feel like that'll definitely add to it as well.
Yeah, and I think, we were at Schoolboy Duels, last week? I think it was last week, whatever it was. And you look at the, top like 15 teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Pennsylvania and Ohio's at the top, and that's like in every division. But then you start looking at the Southeast, and Georgia placed eighth in freestyle, which was awesome, and then Florida placed like 12th, and this is out of 40 teams or whatever it was. And Tennessee has a bunch of studs, man. We know all those kids, Lane and Billers and Gary High, Corderos. There's a lot. Tennessee's got a lot of good kids, man. And I think their only issue was they had some forfeits, or I think Tennessee would have placed a lot higher. But I'll say this, man: the Southeast in general, we as a whole, we can compete with just about anybody.
Absolutely.
Like I think that there's this narrative. Now I will say this: Pennsylvania's A team was maybe unbeatable, but with that being said, like these, the showing that happened up there, and you see a lot of even in the upper weights and things. Like it's cool to see. Like we got training centers all over Georgia and all over Tennessee now. Young Guns is up there with Hatcher, and they opened Minion, and Grindhouse is down in Dalton, and Boskin's got his thing going. There's enough opportunity here for you to be able to compete on a national level, like if you wanted to do that. And I just think there's a narrative that you have to be up north to be, top kid, but that's false. I watched it this weekend. There was a lot of kids from the South that were beating kids that you would have never thought they'd have had a shot in that match. Like it was really cool to see. But I agree, man. It's growing at a rapid rate, and that's a great thing that it's growing.
No, it's something that's only for the better, and we're getting more All-Americans. We're getting more collegiate wrestlers, more people that compete and make moves down the national level. And it really got started in a sense when it comes to the collegiate level with Jordan Lean when he won his national title for Cornell, him being from Baylor. But I think here in the next few years and even after that, we'll have a lot more wrestlers from the South up there making moves in the collegiate scene, all around.
Well, I'll throw out a name that I'm almost certain: Cooper Hilton.
Yeah, great point.
Cooper Hilton, I met him when he was like 11, maybe 10, 11, up at Cleveland. He was like 65-pound kid. And I've known him a long time. He is the most gracious, humble kid you'll ever meet in your life. Like, I love that dude. Every time I see him, like, what's up, man? Great kid. And I wish him the very best when he does go to school, but he's going to make some noise on the college level.
Well, also, I just realized this slipped my mind. I don't know how it did, but you got Cody Chittum as well.
Which he's made noise before he got to college. But he's a true Tennessee kid. I mean, there are. I'll tell you what, Maddox High from Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to be really special in the college level. Like he's got a way about him. Like I think mentality goes a long way. That kid, dude, as long as I've known him, he's always been like real even keel. You know how kids like get over, like in their brain or freak out a little bit or whatever, or get upset. He's just always like even. I think that's going to help him a lot in the long run. But yeah, you're going to see that a lot in the South. I think a lot of kids going to college and making some noise on that level. And you got the kid from Cleveland up at Army right now, Trey McDaniel.
Mm-hmm.
You got the kid from Baylor that was a old Grindhouse kid, Alex Whitworth. He's up at Harvard. And you got the Hunts. Like there's kids up there now. And then Alvarez from Baylor just is heading to North Carolina.
Tar Heel.
Yeah, so it's kind of starting to trickle right now.
Well, you got Corday up there at Michigan State. Then you got Terrell that's going to Appalachian State. And I'm Daniel Yurchek up there at Army. And I know there's a couple that I'm missing, and I hate that slipping my mind right now. But just all in all, there are plenty of studs from the Southeast and that are going to eventually make.
Yeah, Latrell Schaefer, I think, signed at NC State. He's from down at like Perry, Macon area.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of them. There's a kid in Florida right now, Bmoney Solace. I think he's an 8th grader. Dude, he's going to be a stone cold killer. That kid, I watched him wrestle all last week. Wow. Like, he's leaps and bounds ahead of everybody. So he's a Florida kid. So I think the South is slowly like starting to really make an impact on a big scale. And I think it'll only grow from here.
No, I agree. And well, with all that said, thank you for joining me. It's been awesome to talk about your company and talk about the growth of wrestling and the impact that it has. And all in all, I wish you and your company and your son the best when it comes to wrestling and growing the company.
Thanks, man. And anybody wants to follow us, can follow us at Bmoney Beastin Athletics, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and at Bmoney Beastin on Twitter. Website, bmoneybeastinathletics.com.
Agreed. Yeah, if y'all are looking for an affordable wrestling shoe, it's extremely durable and just a down to earth company. Check them out for sure.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
All right, likewise. Take care.
See you, buddy.